what does it mean to have Mars in the 8th house? Let's first explain what the 8th house is. 8th house rules, it's a passageway. It's a passageway between different realms of existence. It's a passageway between life and death, or between death and life as well. The 8th house rules delivering a baby, for example, the passage from, the unknown into the life, or 8th house rules death, the passage from this life into the next life. 8th house rules connecting with invisible worlds. That's why it's an occult house, because it rules any hold and apertures into this reality from another reality. Or it also rules all the apertures in the body, all the holes, and that's where we excrete the food. The 8th house and Scorpio, that's connected to the 8th house, rules the eliminatory system. So any kind of apertures and any kind of passageways that connect one realm of existence to another, whether it's the visible to the invisible world, whether it's like delivery of a baby, whether it's the death of a person, whether it's a life crisis, where one is going from, say, being married for 20 years to being divorced, passing a catastrophic crisis, big changes in one's life, which we call crisis usually, but it's not necessarily that they're for bad, but we experience them like the death of something and the birth of something new. So it's the house not only of death, but of rebirth. And 8th house is, recycling, the recycling of cycles. So when you have Mars there, all those things are sped up, because Mars is fast. They're very vigorous. So crisis can come into the life to those people very vigorously and fast, and they can actually mobilize their energy the best, because Mars is the planet of energy. When they're in life and death situations, when they're in crisis situations, when they're pushed by the wall, when a big change is happening in their life, say someone is born, something dies, someone, you get divorced, you get fired from your job for 20 years, so you're moving from one career to another, big life transformations, or say you had a car crash or whatever, or there is a crisis, there is a flood, there is a revolution in your country, there is a war, there is a big crisis in your family, all those situations of power struggle and a big transition from one state to another in the 8th house, and people with Mars there in the 8th house, they get mobilized exactly in those situations like no one else. So if you see someone with Mars in the 8th house, or you have it, and you are kind of stuck in the same, and you don't want, you want some big change and you wonder how to mobilize the energy, well, usually such people will create subconsciously big crisis in their life, and this will mobilize them. This will give them the up and go. Or if your child has Mars in the 8th house, well, create some kind of extreme situation, and this will mobilize them to go do something, because Mars is the planet of doing something, taking action. So also in such situations of extreme changes, these people are the best because they are fearless. Mars is a fearless planet. When everyone else is running to hide, when everyone else is falling apart, say there is a war, say there is the office, your company has, you go to work one day and there is crisis, your company has plummeted its its shares, so you're in crisis, or the company is in crisis, or these people fare great because they are fearless, they know what to do, they take actions in such situations. That's why Mars in the 8th house people will fare great in emergency careers, emergency response, whether it's ER, say there is a car crash, something life and death, and they're there, they immediately react. ER, or people, firefighters that work in life and death situation, crisis, that they're physical Mars active, they go and they save the situation, when everyone else is afraid. They can be great in situations where there is, say, when everything is falling apart, so there is like the government has toppled down, the currency of your country has toppled down, or some other crisis is happening. They can be great crisis managers. If you're looking for someone to be a crisis manager, Mars in the 8th house people will be amazing at that. And they can actually say, everyone else is losing the currency of their houses, just like there was like the 2008 big crisis, financial crisis that happened in 8th house. Well, those people will get mobilized exactly in such a financial crisis and can make a lot of money even in situations of crisis, can make a lot of money when everyone else is falling apart, when everything else is falling apart. They're there, they take action, their will is stronger, and they do and they make things happen, you know. So actually it sounds scary, the 8th house, but those people can almost be like very fast reaction there and benefit in some way through such situations. And it's also 8th house is penetrating into the bottom of something, digging deep and discovering secrets. 8th house is a very secretive place, and penetrating to secrets. So people with Mars in the 8th house can be great to work for some secret service, take action in secret service, or with some kind of a sensitive and private environment of some sort. They can be great for surgeons. 8th house is, 8th house is surgeries, and Mars is sharp objects. So those people can, in crisis situations, is a surgery anyway, and they can be amazing surgeons because Mars is something sharp. 8th house is, life and death situations, surgeries. And 8th house is considered the house of therapeutic healing, just like is the house of death is the house of rebirth. So 8th house, when we're going through a big crisis in our life, we mobilize the energies of our 8th house. So if we're, say, heartbreak, someone left you, broke your heart, the 8th house is how you're dealing with this crisis. Someone died, the 8th house is how you're dealing with that crisis. Some big change in your life. And people with Mars there, they're amazing at helping others in such life crisis situations. That's why amazing psychologists and psychiatrists that can penetrate to the bottom of the problem, that can help you through big transition with bereavement, with death, with divorce can happen. And also people that are very sick, the healing is the 8th house as well. It's interesting, because it's big transformation from one state, say a state of sickness, you've been sick for 15 years with something, and healing, deep transformative healing is also the 8th house, deep therapeutic healing. Well, with Mars in the 8th house, those people first can very quickly recover from such kind of a extreme situations, first of all, because Mars is mobilizing their energy, and they can help others who are stuck in pain or who are stuck in some physical or mental or psychological or emotional suffering of some sort, some crisis that carried on and is dragged out, and they are not able to make the transition from unhealthy to healthy, or from bereaved to not bereaved anymore, from divorce to stop feeling sadness that they're divorced. People with Mars there can help energize such people. They can help them improve their lives. That's why healers again, and surgeons, very, very healing ability. Shamans, they go into your subconscious and they trigger, because 8th house is also very sudden healing that can happen. And people with Mars, they can do that. And first of all, Mars can penetrate, people with Mars in the 8th, they can penetrate the realms of reality. These people can awaken their Kundalini energy very fast. Because the Kundalini energy is the 8th house, Mars is something vigorous, and the 8th house also rules all the other apertures in our energy systems, the chakras. So Mars there can bring sudden vigorous awakening of the chakras, sometimes through a car crash, sometimes through a powerful sexual experience, because 8th house also rules the 8th house, that can suddenly arise the Kundalini, which can create havoc in a person's life if they don't know what to do with it. It can even create mental extreme situations, extreme mental psychosis and stuff like that. But once these people overcome it, their chakras are open, they become healers, they become shamans, and they can lead others through their dark night of the soul, like a soldier that leads people through the valley of death. 8th house, the valley of death, and Mars is the soldier. And they can help others also, with the passage between various realms of existence, people on the verge of life and death, for example, visible and invisible worlds, speeds up and gives very vigorous movement of the energy pool, so the chakra networks. Sudden awakening of Kundalini, I spoke that. But also, the 8th house indicates that the person that have Mars there will be prone to sudden life crisis, because 8th house is life crisis, Mars is quite fast, and very big sudden reversals in life. They happen, sudden reversals. These people, if you have Mars in the 8th house, you've noticed that probably. And even accidents, because Mars in the 8th house is very prone to accidents. It's just one thing to remember, because 8th house is something crisis, Mars is physical hurt to the body and accident, so they have to be very careful. But the purpose of Mars in the 8th house is not to put you into accidents, not to just give you those sudden reversals to torture you. It's to awaken to radically transform your identity, because the 8th house is about radical transformation. And when we're refusing to do a radical transformation in our life, this Mars in the 8th house comes, and what does it do? It gives an accident, it gives a reversal, a sudden crisis, something painful, Mars, you know, and sudden transformation of the identity. So if you don't want to have that, this proneness to accident, this proneness to lots of reversals in your life, you need to start changing consciously and personally, to do it on your own, to change the identity, to transform on a deep level your identity. And how can you do that? You can start studying psychology, you can start studying the occult, because these 8th house sciences, which delve deep into the subconscious of a person, into the deep motivations, which are very much about big transformation of the identity, you can put a lot of energy to consciously pursue. Mars is to pursue, to vigorously and to put a lot of energy into understanding astrology, into understanding psychology, into crime, to study crime or something like that, which is 8th house again. And this will help you, give you a deep transformation consciously, rather than all those accidents or reversals having to happen in your life, you know. But also when there is a crisis in life, the native with Mars in the 8th house is usually very quickly reborn into a new form, into a new shape, and vigorously they go through this transformation fast. Mars is fast, and it might be painful and intense, but quick. It happens quick, and through sudden situations and crises. And these people after that are great to help others through such situations themselves, because Mars breaks through on the other side faster than any other planet. If you have Saturn in the 8th house, crisis happens, you linger on it for a lifetime, you know, and you need someone with Mars in the 8th to bring this therapeutic sudden crossing over, so you're not stuck on the dark side only. So yeah, it rules. Also, 8th house rules how you die, and also if you are gonna be giving birth, how you're gonna give birth. And sometimes it's your own birth as well, because 8th house is where the life comes and goes and is revived. So in the 8th house, Mars in the 8th house can indicate someone that has a very sudden ending. It doesn't mean whether you die young or old. This is not determined by that. It means how it happens. So it's gonna be sudden, it's gonna be fast. It's gonna sometimes be bloody the way you pass away. But you know, this is good. One moment you're here, the next moment, poof, you haven't prepared for your death, but you might be 92 and just be hit by a bus or whatever, you know. Or you might be 70 and just have a heart attack, and you don't suffer, you don't linger between the two states. Like some people for years, 5 years, they might be like paralyzed on the verge between life and death. No, Mars in the 8th house, they're here 1 second, they're gone in the other, usually through something very fast, whether it's a stroke, whether it's a heart attack. It's very intense and quick. And you wake up in the other reality. And so is the birth. You might have a birth, you have Mars in the 8th house, that is quite bloody, but fast as well. And if you're going to be giving birth, there might be an operation, that the birthing happens through an operation or very fast somehow. Okay, but also a person can die from, 8th house is how you can die from metal, from a gun. Mars is metal, gun, fire. So they have to be careful. They're more prone to crises and accidents through guns, through metal, through firearms. Be careful with those things. Try to consciously avoid them. Let's say, who do we have with Mars in the 8th house? We have Kennedy, Mars in the 8th house, sudden, painless death. We have Princess Diana, Mars in the 8th house, sudden, painless death. We have Abraham Lincoln, sudden, painless death from a fire, from a gun, you know. We also have Marilyn Monroe, sudden, fast death, you know. Again, this is not a guarantee you die young, not at all. It's just fast, but I couldn't find famous people that died from stroke in their 90s, because I don't know them, I don't know who they are, you know. Bruce Willis has Mars in the 8th house, and look what the movies he's made. Die Hard. So it's someone who goes in a crisis situation and is the soldier, fights to help others in a crisis situation to save them. You know, if you know Die Hard, you know what I'm talking about, what the movie means. So okay, so these people can be great for psychiatrists, psychologists, helping others through crisis situation, crisis management, midwives, death and birth, someone who's dealing with crisis situation. Giving a birth is the biggest traumatic experience. So these people are great in such, you know, situations like that. So midwives, Mars in the 8th house, surgeons, occultists, because they penetrate to the secrets and they put a lot of energy in occult, secret, hidden matters. They can be great investigators because 8th house is digging deep, discovering secrets, and Mars puts a lot of energy there. They can be someone that works in secret services like James Bond, who deals with secret affairs. They can be someone who also is a detective of some sort, you know. Okay. Also, the 8th house is your partner's resources, so other people's resources, so the money of your marriage. Or if you're working in a business and you work with other people's money in some way, it's those money, it's in taxes and inheritance. So first of all, Mars there, especially with more difficult aspects, can indicate that you have more fights with your partner about your mutual resources, or that you might fight for some inheritance, or that you might fight for some insurance. But you'll fight till you win, because Mars is a winner. You'll fight and you'll get finally the insurance. You'll fight and you'll get finally the whatever, the mutual resources of some sort. And they also put a lot of energy into, you know, into managing the resources of other people, whether it's clients or whether it's your partner's resources or your mutual resources. So they can be, for example, great financiers, especially in crisis situations of some sort. But anyone that needs to do fast action, Mars, and take fast decisions, Mars, and put a lot of energy into working with other people's resources, any kind of such career, Mars in the 8th house, people can do great with it. Okay, they can also be fighting because of other people's resources, mutual resources, inheritances, and even taxes. Okay, this is what the 8th house also rules. There is also 8th house is hidden. Mars is enemies and fighting. So fighting with hidden private enemies that other people don't know about. Maybe that's Kennedy was doing that. Also fighting with your own inner demons. The 8th house, because you know what they say, we have enemies, yes, but we're also the biggest enemy is ourselves, especially our subconscious urges and desires, which is also the 8th house. And the 8th house also rules those kind of predatory beings that are invisible, that go and attach themselves to us and makes us have compulsive passions and desires that we can even call to obsessive degree, you know, like addictions, sex addictions, food addiction. They're ruled by 8th house. 12, 8th house and 6th house, but each of those addictions come for different reasons. The 6th house is because of nutritional imbalance that causes addictions. 8th house is because of compulsive obsessive compulsive obsessive entities that are sending you energies, and 12th house is because you want to escape reality. But with Mars in the 8th house, you can help others and yourself cut cords with darker energies, almost like a warrior with invisible forces. And you might be fighting with such, first you have to cross that bridge yourself before you can start other people. So you're fighting with we can be fighting with your own inner demons, as we call it, beings that attach to themselves, that make you do impulsive desires, so hurting others, so get angry, whatever it is. You're fighting with those and you can overcome them, and then you can help others fight with those inner demons. Okay, so physical work, or quicker, penetration. Mars is penetration and intervention into psychological traumas. These people can be very good penetrating into psychological traumas. Diagnosis for hidden conditions as well. So if they work in any field where they diagnose hidden 8th house conditions, that with a sudden onset they can penetrate them and find them out quickly, which is what Mars does. But they also experience more confrontations with life and death situations. You know, and it's best, in order for them to deflect that from their own life, being put in life and death situations where they have to fight and react, because this Mars wants to express his energy, and it expresses it in the 8th house in situations of life and death and crisis. If you don't want this life and death and crisis in your life and these constant reversals, direct the energy towards your career with Mars in your 8th house. So it can be great for service for those who have been traumatized or who are ready for healing, to help them, breakthrough. Through breakthrough, those who have suffered catastrophic loss, like emotional, physical, financial, helping others recovering from surgeries. You might be a nurse in a hospital helping others recover from surgery, life and death situations, or childbirth, or victims of war. So put your energy towards others who have suffered this 8th house energy, the reversals, war, cataclysms, catastrophic changes, psychological, emotional, or or physical. Put it towards helping those, and this energy of Mars in the 8th will be channeled towards them, so you don't have to experience it on yourself. Or people that have experienced natural disasters, victims of abuse, social upheaval, crime victims. Put your energy to work with such people, for example, or help them in some way. Okay, there's also possibilities for sudden surgeries. Again, how do you deflect it? By helping others in crisis situations. But they have to be more careful. If you have Mars in the 8th house, sudden surgery are possible. And again, but don't worry, if you die suddenly. No suffering before and after death, for those people. Okay, and the last thing is 8th house is sexual drive. Well, in the 8th house, Mars is our sexual drive. In the 8th house, they might have hidden urges, secret passionate relationships. So there is an inclination for secret. The sex drive is aroused when something is secretive, when something is taboo. The 8th house, when something is very and the way to deflect it is to make it very passionate. 8th house is extremely passionate. Even obsessive sexual relationship it can lead. So these people need a healthy sex life, or else they can get into some darker sexual things, because 9th house is darker, some sexual perversities and extremes. So they can deflect it by using the higher vibration of the 8th house. Because they have such powerful sexuality, they can use it for tantric sex, because 8th house is the Kundalini, remember, that connects the visible to the invisible life, that energy when it rises, and it rises through Kundalini sex. So they can have really intense sexual experiences with their partners that awaken their higher powers, and that deflects the energy from more darker, obsessive from the darker experience of the 8th house. And you see, like Kennedy had those secret, he was very aroused by secret passionate relationships. So was Marilyn Monroe. They were both in a secret passionate relationship. So anyway, that's what I see for Mars in the 8th house. Hope you enjoy that one. And in a few weeks, we'll do Mars in the 9th house, which is more easier position, but it's not as transformative and intense and powerful for transformation in your life and other people's transformations as Mars in the 8th house. And by the way, Mars in the 8th house, they have the fastest access to therapeutic transformations in their life. For deep healing, they have the fastest access to such deep healing and transformation of the identity than any other position in astrology. Thank you. If you want to learn astrology with me, check out my courses, astrolada.com, in the courses section.